The traditional Shanti mantra, as it is called.
Not 1 hour, 30 minutes.
I know. So the Shanti mantra is called a peace chant. All the scriptures belonging to the Vedic tradition begin and end with a Shanti mantra. This is very significant because Shanti or peace is something which is most vital to humanity. Nowadays everybody knows Om Shanti thanks to several other reasons apart from religion. Shanti means peace, and all of us look for joy or happiness. And the Bhagavad Gita beautifully says, Ashantasya kutas sukham. You can't have joy without peace. So peace is so vital, so very important. Therefore, all the Upanishads, for example, begin and end with the Shanti mantra. The mantra with which I am going to begin comes from the Kena Upanishad, in which the emphasis is given on strength of body, strength of mind, strength of senses, and being devoted to the supreme reality rather than being devoted to sense pleasures. This is important for the youth of India because, as Swami Vivekananda said, the youth of India are particularly weak in body and weak in mind and senses. So this mantra talks about how the body should be nourished, how the mind should be enriched, how the senses should be fully awakened, so that with an awakened body and the mind and senses, you will be able to intuit the supreme reality, which is called Brahman. Interestingly, this mantra is chanted at the very beginning of the sannyasa ceremony, because without a powerful body, awakened mind and senses, one cannot go through the rigor of a spiritual realization. Om apyayantu mamangani vak pranas chakshusrotra matho balamindriyani cha sarvani sarvam brahmopanishadam maham brahma nirakuriyam mama brahma nirakarot anirakaranamastvanirakaranam mestu tadatmani nirateya upanishatsu dharmaste mayi santu om shanti 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 harihi om tat sat. My respectful salutations to Swami Gyanadananda Ji, the Adhyaksha, the President of this Ramakrishna Math, Hyderabad, Swami Bodhasarananda Ji, who has come all the way from Belur Math, where I also live. He is the Assistant Secretary, as you know, of the Ramakrishna Math and the Ramakrishna Mission, all the revered monks and the brahmacharis, and the other speaker of the day, the respected Praveen Kumar Ji, and my very dear young friends, men and women, from all the parts of India. At the very outset, may I offer my sense of gratitude to Swami Gyanadananda Ji and Swami Bodhamayananda Ji for having agreed to organize this National Youth Convention at a very short notice, because I happen to be the national convener of the youth programs which have been undertaken by the Ramakrishna Mission at Belur Math headquarters to commemorate the 150th birth anniversary of Swami Vivekananda. And we were desperately trying to find out who could organize this National Youth Convention such a short notice, and I'm extremely happy and grateful that the Hyderabad Math, under the leadership of Swami Gyanadananda Ji and Bodhamayananda to assist him, have been able to organize this at such a short notice with 1,100 youth delegates coming from the various states of India. So I greet you in the name of Swami Vivekananda, welcome you to this, and you will be soaked in Vivekananda's ideas for 3 full days. And some people may feel it's an overdose of Vivekananda. Our students at the Ramakrishna Mission in Calcutta and other places, they keep complaining. Can't you say anything except Vivekananda? All the time dining Vivekananda into us. Then I always tell them, you see, we have worn this Garuva robe only to talk to you constantly about the higher values in life, about Swami Vivekananda, in spite of you getting irritated. We are not going to leave you so easily. So you have to bear with us for 3 full days. And you will remember after 20 years, 30 years, and shed tears that you have been given this education into Vivekananda's teachings. Many of you will go abroad, many of you will be occupying great positions in India and elsewhere, and it is not your science and technology who is going to protect you, it is the values that you imbibe, and it is the knowledge of the Indian cultural and spiritual heritage that you hear from us which is going to protect you. When you go to anywhere, any corner of India or anywhere in the world, remember, people are going to ask you about India, its rich cultural heritage and spiritual heritage. And you will have to play, whether you like it or not, the cultural ambassador of India. If you say you do not know, then people are going to laugh at you because they know much more about India than you. Indians going out playing ignorance, saying that I do not know much of Sanskrit, I do not know the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads, will be taught by the foreigners. The sad day should not come when we may have to learn our scriptures and Sanskrit from Germans and Russians. Swami Vivekananda said, train young people by the thousands like fiery missionaries and send them like rolling waves across the whole world. And he also said, give me 20 men and women sincere to the backbone, pure in heart, and I will shake the world. Unfortunately, he could not get 20. 20 of the type which he wanted. And he also said once, suddenly looked at everybody who was around them and said, who is there here who will stand in the street yonder and say that they possess nothing but God? Who will come? Everybody was simply stunned into silence. Then Swamiji said, why should anybody be afraid? If this is true, the great spiritual truths, what else matters? If this is not true, what do our lives matter? I will begin with this great sentence. Think about this sentence. If you feel spirituality, religion, inwardness, purity, holiness, truthfulness, unselfishness, these values, if you feel are not worth it, or not true, what else matters in life? Going to the office every day for 40 years, repeating the same rigmarole of life day after day, watching the television and moving around, retiring, and finally to die unwept, unhonored, unremembered, and unmourned. Is it all about life? Swami Vivekananda said, since you have been born a human being, make a mark. Because human birth, as scriptures say, is one of the rarest in life. And you have the youth with you, which we have lost. We go back our youthful days and say how much more we could have accomplished if we had known these great truths much earlier. Our passion in telling you all this is because you can do much more with these great truths than older people. Older people have the wisdom, they have the sincerity, they have the passion. Unfortunately, their bodies and minds do not really cooperate. You have all the strengths in the body and the mind, but you are not exposed to high thoughts. Swami Vivekananda therefore said, if this is true, what else matters? If this is not true, what do our lives matter? Our lives have no meaning if only the sense world is the only true world. Sri Ramakrishna, the famous guru of Swami Vivekananda, famously said, if you put zeros and zeros and zeros, they will add up only to zero. I finally say, suppose you go to somebody, a rich person who says, I will give you a big donation, please come and meet me. I go to his office and takes his checkbook and writes, I look how much amount he is writing there. He puts a zero and a zero and a zero and another zero. I get irritated. What, you're kidding? Are you playing with me? Then with a smile, he puts a 1 before that. Then, sir, please add some more zeros. What has happened there? 0 and 0 and 0 and 0 add up to 0, but with 1 before it, the value of each 0 enhances the value of the entire figure. Sri Ramakrishna said that 1 is the spirituality, is God. And all the zeros are the worldly values. The worldly values are not unreal. Remember that. Our scripture does not say you give up the world and throw away the pleasures and walk away as a monk into the forest. We are not going to do that. We don't want any of you to go away into the forest. We want you to be successful here in this life and be also successful in the life hereafter, what you call the spiritual life. Abhyudaya and Nishreyasa are the two great values which our scripture teaches. Dharma, Artha, Kama, you need money for enjoyment, but that has to be within the framework of dharma. Through dharma, you can attain everything. Vyasadeva, the old grand sayer of Indian lore, once said, I shout at the top of my voice, raising both my arms, but nobody is listening to me. Even in those days, nobody listened to anybody. What about now? Urdhvavahur viromyesha nachakitsu srunoti mam. What am I saying? Dharmat arthascha kamascha sakimartham na sevyate. Through dharma, you can attain artha, wealth, also you can enjoy life. So, within the framework of dharma, you have artha and kama, and ultimately it will lead you to moksha. So, the wonderful way of life which our scriptures have given to us is that you go through life, enjoy life, but within the framework of dharma. So what is dharma? Dharma is described as a very important principle which holds the society together. Holding the society, the modern word which is used for holding something is the sustenance. Sustainability is the most modern buzzword now. You talk about sustainable development, you talk about sustainable agriculture. That which sustains the entire society is the principle of dharma. What does it say? It's the principle of sacrifice. Everybody has to sacrifice his or her self-interest for the sake of the society. You are not an individual, but you are a part of this collective, you are part of the macrocosm. So Swami Vivekananda's educational vision flowed from this idea of the divinity of the human being and all beings in general, and the solidarity of the universe and the oneness of existence, in which he saw the unity or the identity of the microcosm or the macrocosm. The microcosm is a small unit, which is I, which is me. The macrocosm is a large unit outside me. Even in simple science, for example, the microcosm are the atoms and the molecules and the particles, the subatomic particles, the nuclei and so on, subnuclear particles. And the macrocosm is the vast entity outside, the sun and the moon and the stars and the nebulae. Now, the micro and the macro have a wonderful equation. They are actually identical. This was a great vision Swami Vivekananda had when he was meditating under a peepal tree in Almora. And it opened up a tremendous vista before him. So most of his teachings flow from this idea of the identity of the microcosm or the macrocosm. Who is an educated person? An educated person is one who does not live for himself or herself. An educated person is one who opens himself to the cosmos. An educated person is one who lives in tune with the infinite. An educated person is one who is cosmocentric and not egocentric. Swamiji repeatedly said, what is the use of education? It makes you more and more selfish and live only for yourself. And this globalized world, you can't live for your own self. There is a concept very newly, Swami Ranganathananji of revered memory, Hyderabad Mutt reminds us repeatedly of his presence everywhere. He used to talk about enlightened selfishness. You be selfish. Nobody says you should be absolutely selfless, starve yourself to death and give away all that you have to somebody else. No, have all that you have. Be enlightened in your selfishness. What does that mean? I'll give you a story. The story is that of a farmer. There is a farmer who was purchasing very costly, expensive, good seeds and using it not only in his own farm, but giving it to everybody free of cost, all his neighbors. Somebody told him, don't be so selfless. You use good seeds yourself, but why do you distribute them free of cost to everybody around you? He smiled and said, because I am selfish. Selfish? You are distributing this free of cost. He smiled and said, you see, if I use expensive good seeds in my farm, and the farms around me, if they use bad seeds, less expensive, not good seeds, then the chances are that the birds will pick out those bad seeds and put it on my farm. So I have to guard my farm against this, and I have to ensure that all the people around me also use good seeds. Notice that? Which is what is happening now on ground. The present Prime Minister, for example, just the news yesterday, day before, he is trying to go to country after country, not far away, but very, very near, to Nepal, to Bhutan, and then to Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. We have to make friendship with our neighbors, because without that we can't survive. It is not because we are absolutely unselfish, we go on distributing wealth to everybody. In order that I may be strong and powerful, I need all my neighbors to be equally peaceful and strong. If there is no peace in my neighboring country, I can't have peace. Now, globalization has taught us all countries far and near are our neighbors. There is no difference between USA and Europe and Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. Because globalization has shrunk the entire world into what you now call the global village. You can't be peaceful and happy unless your surroundings are happy. This was realized by Indian sages long, long ago. They talked about the environment, the animals, the plant kingdom, and of course the human beings. All of them should be happy. Happiness should flow everywhere. Swami Vivekananda therefore said, an educated person is one who opens his heart and mind to embrace the entire world of humanity, living and non-living beings in the environment. There's a famous Shanti mantra once again, which says, bliss should flow. Bliss is madhu. Madhu means honey, or bliss, or joy. The winds should give us joy. The water should flow with joy. And the trees and the plants should be full of joy. Even the dust of the earth should be full of joy. Dust is not a bad thing. We say, hey, clean this dust everywhere. Dust should not be always cleaned. Don't keep your houses unclean. But the difficulty is, when you clean the dust, where do you have to throw it somewhere? When you throw it somewhere, that is going to be dirty anyway. But that dust is very sacred. That's why in India, we talk about Pada Renu, the dust of the feet of God. You don't want the feet of God, you want the dust at the feet of God. Why? Physics people will know that dust is the nucleus over which supersaturated water forms a small water drop without which there can't be rain. If rain is to be possible, you will require plenty of dust. That's when India, reasonably, we are very dirty, so we get reasonably good rains also. So it's just by way of joke. So even the dust should bring us joy. Madhuvata ritayate madhuksharanti sindhava madhvi irna santoshadhi madhunakta mutoshasi madhumatparthivagum rajaha madhudjaurastuna pita madhumanno panaspatir madhumahum mastu surjah madhvirgavo bhavantunah om madhu om madhu om madhu. The ancient sages saw everything is full of bliss. Do you know that the word dukkha doesn't occur anywhere in the Upanishads? Because everything is joy. Anandam, anandam, anandam kevalam. Ko hevanyat kaf pranyat idesha akasha anando nasyat. Who will be here to live and breathe if the entire sky, the heavens were not covered by ananda? The idea of dukkha was introduced in India for the first time by Gautam Buddha, who said sarva dukkham dukkham sarvam dukkham. Our ancient sages said anandam anandam kevalam anandam sarvameva. Everywhere there is ananda. So an educated person who is not full of joy cannot give joy to others. What kind of education he has got? There are some people who can't really smile. They're always extremely serious. They will walk like that when you say, how are you? I'm well. So why don't you smile? So the greatest joy you can give to others through a smile. Swami Vivekananda was challenged when he was in the West, because Swami Vivekananda is full of joy. The Christian missionary is very, very fond of some kind of sorrow. A religious person has to be very serious and sorrowful. I am religious, therefore I will not smile, I will not talk to others, I will always walk as if spirituality is going to fall down from me. If I walk fast, spirituality may fall down, so I should walk very carefully. Swamiji was asked by some people, don't you ever feel sad? You are so joyful all the time. He said, I do feel sad sometimes. When? When I have a stomachache. Then he said, we are the children of immortal bliss. Why should we be sorrowful all the time? So Swamiji's idea of education, which makes a total personality. Who is a total personality? This is a very simple formula. H plus H plus H is a total personality. H is the heart, second H is the head, third H is the hand. In Sanskrit, we call it Jnana, Bhakti and Karma. You should have the heart to feel, the head to conceive, the brains to conceive, and hands to work. So a complete person who has a tremendous feeling heart, very sharp intellect to be able to find out what is the right solution to the problems, and to be able to work it out in practical life. Swamiji also said, our educated people are absolutely useless when it comes to practical life. An electrical engineer who holds a DSc in electrical engineering will call a class 8 passed ITI mechanic to be able to fix something in his electrical network at home. Because he is so highly learned, he does not know how to fix an ordinary thing at home. This is one thing Swamiji said we have to learn from the West. The Westerners were intensely practical. And Asians, particularly Indians, are kind of dreamers. We always live in philosophical dreams without being able to actualize them on the ground. Swamiji said, an educated person is one who not only can dream dreams, not only can envision great ideas, not only can feel the power of these ideas deep within, not only feel committed to these ideas, but also be able to actualize them, realize them at the ground level. That was Swamiji's own greatness. Such a great vision he had, the Ramakrishna movement, the teachings of his own Guru Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. But he translated them into reality and started this great Ramakrishna movement, which has been sustaining itself for more than a century and going stronger every day. What is the power? The power of ideas, and the ideas translated into practicality. Swamiji said with great sorrow, we Indians are hopelessly impractical. We can't translate an idea and put it into practice. And the great ideas which the scriptures have, the Upanishads and the Gita teach, those ideas have remained only in the books. They have not been practicalized in everyday life. Indians are very religious, as you know, and they always are fond of worship. Swamiji funnily said, if anybody comes and worships me and shows camphor, arati before me, I'll become a ghost and break his neck. So whenever we do arati at Belur Math Swamiji's birthday, we are very careful without necks. You do not know when Swamiji is going to pounce on you and break your neck. What he meant was, we are only fond of rituals. Everything is only ritualistic. Everything is only breaking coconuts. And going around temples is good. It's good for the legs. You will not get deep vein thrombosis. That is the idea. So we are only ritualistically minded, but not practical. So Swamiji said, the great ideas in our books should be made practical in everyday life. Advaita should become living, poetic in everyday life. Unless the great truths are translated in everyday life, what is the use of those great truths? Educated people, according to Swami Vivekananda, should be those who have practicalized the ideas which have received through education. Our scriptures teach that the soul is divine. The same Lord is present everywhere. Divinity is percolating everywhere. Isha vasyamidam sarvam mitkincha jagatyam jagat. Glorious ideas. But in practice, so much of differences. This man is untouchable, this man is a low caste, this man is a high caste. Swamiji despised this and said, Swami Ranganathanji's very favorite quote it was, there is no religion on earth which talks about the glory of the human soul in such lofty strains as Hinduism, and there is no religion which tramples upon the necks of the poor as much as Hinduism does. Irony cannot go any further. So we don't need new teachings. All that we need is to translate these teachings in everyday life, in practice, and transform the society on the basis of these glorious teachings. Swami Vivekananda also said, this was quoted by Swami Bodhisattva in the morning, that civilization is greatest when the highest truths become the most practical. We have the highest truths in our country, but they were not made practical. Swami Vivekananda therefore said, through education, you imbibe high ideas, fill your brain with these ideas. You don't have to have too many ideas. If you have imbibed half a dozen ideas and made them, assimilated them, made them a life and character, you are more learned than a person who has got by heart the whole dictionary. If information is equivalent to education, then encyclopedias will be rishis. Now Swamiji would have said, the CDs and DVDs and the Google will be the greatest rishi. Do you know Rishi Google? The greatest rishi, at the click of a mouse you get everything. Anything, any keyword you type and then put enter. 1,20,000 entries, 0.001 second. Look at the miracle. We talk about the GBs. Nowadays everybody has most of you will have a pen drive in your pocket. 8 GB, 10 GB. What is the GB of the human brain? Can you tell me? Infinite GB. Infinite GB, it can simply absorb anything. You can retrieve information at any time. You can store information. What is going wrong? We unfortunately save too much information and too much of ideas than necessary. Wrong ideas we keep on storing in the brain and create what are known as bad sectors. You know, in the hard disk you have bad sectors. You create so many bad sectors. Now and then you have to, what do? Defragmentation. So you clean the whole thing. Sometimes if the things become too bad, then the computer engineer will tell you, you have to reformat the whole disk. All the information will be lost. Are you ready? Reformatting the whole thing is taking a new birth, and you cleanly wipe off all that you have remembered earlier. So you need not go for that too much. Even when you are here, all that you need to do in education, you save only what is necessary, what is holy, what is elevating, what is important, what is true. Don't waste your space, the memory space, in storing too many things. That fellow, 1 year ago, he scolded me. This fellow insulted me. You remember all that useless stuff in your brain. Our boys and girls come and tell me, hey, I can't remember many things which I have studied. You ask them, how many centuries Sachin Tendulkar scored in which match? They know it immediately. If you ask them about some film song, etc., they know it by heart. But you are useless in remembering these things which need not be remembered, but you don't have space for something holy and good. You will remember only those things in which you have interest. This is a very important thing to remember. Swamiji spoke about concentration as the very basis of education. Why is it that we are not able to concentrate? You tell me? Because we are not interested. I'll give you an example. India-Pakistan World Cup final. Last ball, last over, 6 ball to go, 10 runs to score. And you're glued to the television. If somebody says, concentrate on this television screen, what does it mean? You will not do anything else. People are calling you for food, there's a telephone call, nothing matters. You're simply glued to that. Why? Because you are terribly interested. Where you have the interest, the entire energy will be drawn. So, Bible, the Holy Bible says, the Christ says there, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So find out which is your treasure. Your treasure, is it in higher things or lower things? If you're interested in something very low, vulgar, useless, then immediately you pick it up. You eat all kinds of things. Junk food and fast food and all that people now, youngsters are very fond of. They always tell the young people, God has not created the stomach to be a dustbin so that you put all kinds of things there. And nature, God or whoever you call it, the kind Mother Nature cleanses your stomach every day, becomes a scavenger. Remember that. The divinity sacrifices the divinity, as it were, becomes your scavenger, cleans your bowels every day so that you can fill it up with junk food the next day. It doesn't ask you, why did you do it, my child? I can't clean it. Oh, I like it. You go on eating. Remember, your body is the greatest, valuable, most valuable instrument God has given you. Don't waste it. Keep it pure. Your senses should be kept pure. Your body should be kept pure because it's the temple of God. Your mind should be kept holy because God is residing there. Every touch of your limbs, they feel the divinity there. And if you lead a holy and pure life, concentration is just automatic. Many people fight shy of talking about purity, but I always talk about it, particularly in such fora, very openly, because we have been authorized to do it by this Garua. Live a pure life. This is my submission and plea and request to all of you. When you are a student, when you are young, you live a life of absolute, impeccable, uncompromising purity. They call it brahmacharya in Sanskrit. It doesn't mean anything extraordinary. Your senses should be under your control, that's all. Who is a human being? A human being is a person, an educated person is a person who has his senses and body under control. If your senses are going to lead you, you are going to slave to your senses and then claim I am a free person. Ramakrishna Mission students always complain to us. We are being jailed here. Every day there's a routine. Also 3 days you will see. Get up, sleep at this time, get up at this time, do yoga at this time, eat at this time. Or the announcer was saying, every minute is precious, you can't be late. So are we like machines? That is not the idea. The idea is you have to be under your own control. A human being who is a slave to his senses is worse than an animal. An animal is like that. If there's a piece of meat lying there and a dog will not discriminate and use his viveka. Now, for whom is it? Should I now take it? It will simply pounce on it because its instinct is telling it to eat it. But human beings will apply their viveka, discrimination. That was why Swamiji were called Viveka Ananda, a person who finds joy in Viveka. Discriminate. Don't be slaves to your senses. Your senses are constantly pulling you out. Man says, no, I will conquer my senses. The eyes say, come on, watch this television. The mind says, tomorrow I have an exam. Don't worry, come on. I am dictating to you. The ears say, listen to this music. Now, unfortunately, boys and girls can't remain for a moment without listening to something or the other. You know the kind of wires that they put like a serpent on Shiva's neck. Then all the time, I always feel the poor ears, they should have some rest. Don't bombard them with sound all the time. Then you have to listen to something or the other. You can't be peaceful. Then the taste, of course, the tongue is a terrible demon. The tongue says, come on, give me more and more. I have very high diabetes, but I say, no, the Rasagulla, no, I'll increase my insulin dose. So why can't I control my tongue? And my touch and my nose. How many billions of dollars are spent for scent? You don't know. So the Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, the five senses are constantly pulling you outside, making you your slaves. A human being, an educated person is one who says, I will conquer all of them. Just one or two stories I will tell and finish. My time is almost up. Swamiji's power of concentration. These are not jokes, these are not stories. These are documented evidences from Vivekananda's own life by people who were critical about him. Swamiji is in the West. The cowboys challenged Swamiji once. You know the cowboys? Cowboys are people who ride the horses and then they can shoot well. They wear the jeans pant. Then you will know. The jeans pant is a cowboy culture. The first world throws all the junk to the third world, and we pick it up with great joy and think we are cultured. And I asked one boy who was wearing a jeans pant, so much, it's torn here and there. I said, why is it? No, it is not torn. That is the way it is done. The more it is torn, the more expensive it is. I don't know whether it's true. So Swamiji was challenged by the cowboys. They said, you are talking about Vedanta, you are talking about high spiritual truths. You have to accept a challenge. Come on, stand here. An old broken bucket was inverted as a podium. Swamiji was made to stand on this. Now we are going to shoot at you. What is that? They were very careful ainsmen. They could shoot very accurately. The bullets will pass by both your ears with tremendous speed. If you just shake your head out of fear, then your ears will go. Are you prepared? Swamiji said, yes. See how thrilling it is. Swamiji stood there and the bullets were passing by. He stood there and gave 1 full hour lecture on Vedanta. At the end, they took Swamiji on their shoulders. He said, he is our great guru. On another occasion, cowboys were playing with egg shells. You know, egg shells are very light things which float on water. The egg shells will be floating on a river and you have to shoot at them. Every time they failed. Swamiji was looking at them and laughing very derisively, sarcastically. They got very angry. What? Do you mean to say it is easy? Can you try? Swamiji said, I can. He took the gun. Every time he shot, accurately. Said, for how many years, sir, have you been practicing this? Swamiji smiled and said, that the first time in touching a gun. Then they said, how could you do it? Swamiji's answer was so fantastic. He said, very simple. I told my mind, oh my mind, shoot, and it did. Finished. Your mind, your body, your senses should be absolutely under your control, like a trained dog. You tell the dog, do this, it has to do it. Like a computer, for example. You program a computer in a particular way, whether you like it or not, the computer will exactly follow the program. There may be some mistake in the program. The computer is not going to tell you, sir, there's a mistake in the program, shall I correct it? Sometimes it could, if the program is also made that way. So your body, mind, your senses should be so programmed that it shall obey what you ask it to do. You are the king, you are a Chakravarti. That's why the monks in the Hindu tradition are called Maharajas. We are Maharajas without any kingdom. We don't have a kingdom, but we are Maharajas. Why? The inner kingdom of the spirit, where we rule and we are the rulers of this kingdom. The senses and the body and the mind are all your slaves and servants. Third occasion, and I'll stop. Swamiji was very ill at Belur Math. The Kaviraj had come. The Kaviraj told him, Swamiji, I have a very peculiar request to make to you. You should not drink water for 21 days. Swamiji said, how is it possible? It's so hot. I drink so much of water. No, please, I will give you a kind of fruit juice, but don't drink water. Swamiji said, do you really mean it? Then he told his mind and his body, hey, don't drink water. Finished. Forgot about it totally. After a couple of days, when he was rinsing his mouth, a few droplets of water were trying to enter his mouth unconsciously, and it found the muscles of the throat twisted and in such a way that the water was thrown out. Swami said, what is happening? Then he remembered, oh, I told you not to drink water. The body is faithfully obeying. It is not a joke. Swamiji said, an educated person is a person who is a conqueror of his own self. Encyclopedia Britannica were purchased, 25 shining volumes. his dear disciple Sharachandra Chakravarti had come. He told Swamiji, Swamiji, it is impossible for a person to complete these 25 volumes in his lifetime. Swamiji said, I knew you were stupid. You are now displaying your ignorance. I have finished 10 volumes and I am reading the 11th volume. Come on, ask any question, I will answer you. The disciple is examining the Guru. He took one volume at random, 8th volume, opened a page and asked him. Swamiji repeated the answer, in some cases exactly repeating verbatim what was in that page. Then he said, oh Swamiji, this is superhuman power. We can't really do it. This is one thing Swamiji hated. Don't say, oh, he is great, he can do, but we can't do. Jai Swamiji Maharaj Ji ki jai, put some flowers and go back and do you whatever you have been doing. Swamiji hated this idea. Don't worship me, follow me. In India, as I said, we are great ritualists and worshippers. Do you have the Gita? Do you have the Chandi? Do you have Bhagavata? Yeah, we have. What do you do? Oh, such a holy book. So we keep it in the shrine, keep it in the Vedi, put some flowers every day and do respectful pranams. Why? It is too holy. I can't open and read it. It's so holy. This is one, we are cheats, number one. We cheat ourselves. Swamiji said, you follow me. Follow my teachings. And don't say, oh, he is great and we can't do that. This is one way of cheating ourselves. Swamiji said there is nothing called superhuman. Everything is human. Human mind has infinite powers. You also can do it, provided you observe the strictest brahmacharya, the purity, and develop concentration of mind. So this is an educated person, just like a Xerox machine, a scanner, for example. How much time does a scanner take? You put it there, in seconds, you have 1,000 copies of Xerox. So your mind can be a Xerox machine or a scanner, immediately you get it. These are some of the ideas of Vivekananda's education thoughts we shared with you. Thank you for patiently listening.